On the Red Smith goes to strike a deal for Alan Goldberg and CeCe Lopez. First victory since May of 2007, and he wins the Red Smith by 7. You know, it has been a terrific year for a number of New York breds. Commentator won the Whitney and the Mass Cap. The locally owned Bustin' Stones retired undefeated, won the Grade 1 Carter, and then there's Tin Cup Chalice. The first 3-year-old to ever sweep the Big Apple Triple. Next up for Tin Cup Chalice, a stop in Japan for the Japan Cup Dirt. And our first guest this morning, joining us live via telephone, is his trainer and part owner, Mr. Mike Lecesse, Mike Marcasano, and Mike Veach, welcoming you to Down the Stretch.
Good morning to you guys.
Good
How
morning,
are you, Mike?
Good to talk to you again.
Mike, as a first-time guest to this program, please tell our audience a little bit about yourself, if you would.
I've been training for about 30 years, and I've been basically based at Finger Lakes. I went to Philadelphia Park in the early 80s for about 7 or 8 years, and came back to Finger Lakes, and I've been here ever since.
Mike, did your dad own Fiorito, the 1981 Whitney hero?
Yes, he did.
You know, you were just a kid at that time, but what do you remember about the experience with Fiorito?
I remember back then traveling to Saratoga and watching them run in the Whitney and seeing them come through the gate, and my heart just sank. They loaded him back in the gate, and obviously the rest is history. He won. And it was probably the most exciting day, early on in my career.
Well, maybe the most exciting day till a point last year. Before we get to that, Mike, I believe Tin Cup Chalice was in the fall sale here at Saratoga a couple of years ago. And my understanding is he didn't sell. Tell the audience, how did you come to have Tin Cup Chalice?
I own the mare, and Scott and I partnered up on the mare. He wanted to rebreed him back to E to buy, and so once the foal was born, the horse went down to Kentucky and actually caught botulism. And Scott and I were, 50 owners at that time on Tin Cup Chalice, and he survived that. We actually thought he was going to have to be put down at one point early on down there. And he came back. He was at Scott's farm as a weanling and got a little bout of colic. And that put a little scare in us. And then in the sale, he didn't sell, so we decided, well, if he didn't sell for a certain price, we were going to go ahead and race him because we had so much money into him at the time. It wasn't worth selling him at a big loss.
Well, it's a good thing, as we know, he didn't sell. Back in August at Saratoga in the Albany, Tin Cup Chalice became the first horse ever to sweep the Big Apple Triple. He's in front, rating very kindly. Mike, as our audience watches the stretch run, tell us what this victory was like. What did this mean to you?
It was kind of like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. It was a lot of pressure going into that race, being that he would be the first horse to ever accomplish a new feat in racing, and all the racing fans at Finger Lakes and the fans that were at Saratoga that day, I think half of them were from Finger Lakes.
Yes.
A lot of the people made the trip, and it was very exciting. It was a big thrill. It was a big thrill for me.
Now, Mike, we know that day there was a late scratch of a horse that day, and it was a speed horse. The pace was in your favor that day, but your horse seems to relax very, very well on the front end, and he has one of those wonderful traits in racehorses. He doesn't seem to like to let other horses go by him.
Well, that's true, but in actuality, I think the horse will come off the pace. It's just been the way that races have set up for him that he's been in front comfortable. Basically, going into that into the Albany, I had told Pedro that I wanted to go the first half in 48 and change. 48, I think, is what I told him. And and then I thought we'd have a good chance in there. And it was the same thing at Hoosier Park. Watching the races all week, I picked out a number, and I think it was 47 and change. I wanted him to go, and whether we were in front or not, it wasn't a factor. It was making the horse pace a certain pace to be able to finish up comfortably. And it just happened that he was in front every time.
Well, our audience is watching the stretch run of the Indiana Derby. Mike, another gritty win here. Pyro's coming, but he's not going to let him go by. In general, talk about your horse. What is he like to train? And again, he appears to have that wonderful trait where he will dig down and not let anybody go by him.
That's correct. He seems to find more gears. So as the race gets tougher, he digs in and finds another gear that only special horses seem to have, and he's one of them.
Mike, he missed a recent start here in New York. How much time did he miss as far as training?
He was only out of training for about 4 days. He had an abscess on the day that we were going to, I think it was the day before we were going to ship to New York. And we decided to scratch him at that time. And about 2 days after that, he ended up popping an abscess and soaked his foot, got sound, and he was back in training.
Mike, how did the trip for the Japan Cup Dirt come about?
Mr. Nobu from the Japan Racing Association contacted me via email and via phone. Invited us to the Japan Cup, and when he first invited us, we were a little unsure if we were going to go or not because obviously the race runs in the opposite direction. So I was debating whether or not to go, and he ended up training the last 2 workouts that he's had. He's been in the other direction, and the first workout was fair. He missed switching his leads on cue. The second time he worked, he was like he had done it all his life. So I think he's acclimated real well to training in that direction, and hopefully running in that direction he will not have a problem.
Talk about your shipping plans, if you would. When are you going to send him over? Give him how much time to work over the track there in Japan?
He will ship over on the 19th, and he'll go into quarantine until the 25th, I believe, where he'll be moved out of quarantine. At the quarantine center, we can train, and he'll be shipped from there to the track, and it's about I think it's about a 9-hour van ride from the quarantine center to the racetrack, and then he'll be there for the duration. It's about 3 weeks prior to racing. We'll be in Japan. I hope it's enough time to get him acclimated, and first time on a plane for the horse, so a couple of new things going on for Tin Cup.
Well, Mike, this is quite a story, and again, isn't it great that he didn't sell at the Saratoga Falls sale, because you have one terrific racehorse. Let's